When I married Jillian, or Jill as she preferred to be called, I had no idea of the nightmare that would unfold. My name is Tony Rowan. As I mentioned, my wife's name is Jill. When we got married, I was sure that we would grow old together and enjoy our grandchildren. I started my own business as a consulting engineer 2 years after we got married. Jill was working for a small medical supplies company. We both agreed to get settled and save some money before starting a family. For 8 years, we were happy and our sex life was great. I honestly thought I had married the perfect woman. I bought a small cottage in a quiet side street. It needed a lot of repairs inside, but was structurally sound. Our nearest neighbor was 200 yards away and there were only 6 other houses in the lane. It took almost a year and the house was finally finished. We did most of the work ourselves. I had to hire workers to do some plumbing and electrical work. I was glad the job was done. Jill and I often talked about how perfect it would be when we finally had kids. Everything went wrong just before our 9th anniversary. Jill often became very harsh with me. Add that to the fact that her sex life was practically dead and her attitude began to piss me off. Jill started meeting girls from work several nights a week or so, she said. Wherever they went, it must have been nice because she never got home before midnight. I began to think the worst, but I reasoned that she would never cheat on me. Although I had no idea how wrong I was, I had a childhood friend whom I turned to for advice. Barry Patton and I have been friends since we met in our freshman year of high school. When my company expanded and I needed an executive director, I turned Barry because he was someone I could trust. Barry knew Jill, and at first, he couldn't believe what I was telling him, but after learning the details, he changed his mind. All the signs are there, Tony. If you want my opinion, I think Jill is cheating on you. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I would bet my career on it. When Barry said that, I knew he wasn't joking. I thanked him and returned to my office. I sat at my desk wondering what to do in this situation. If Jill cheated, then that was it. Our marriage was over. The bad thing was that she would get half of everything I owned. I looked for a private investigator and found one who could meet with me later that day. When I explained my concerns to Joe Amos, the private investigator me that if Jill was cheating, he would have the evidence I needed. I left his office feeling a little better. In the back of my mind, I hoped and prayed that I was way on his services. The next day, I met with a technician at the cottage so he could install some hidden cameras. He also connected a voice recorder to the telephone line. I didn't think it would show anything. Jill wasn't stupid enough to use the house phone if she was cheating. A week later, I contacted Joe and the news was devastating. All this is in the report and the DVD is very clear. If I were you, I wouldn't watch it. Knowing is one thing, but seeing is a completely different game. After thanking Joe for his advice, I paid him my final fee and left with the report and DVD. Back in my office, I didn't take Joe's advice and watch the DVD. The report revealed that her so-called girl outings were a cover for her to have sex with some jerk she was working with. They took several long lunches and the afternoon off to go and have sex at a motel a few miles away. The report also said they went to his house several times. The DVD was recorded on Thursday. Jill arrived home in the afternoon with a man. They immediately went to the bedroom and engaged in debauchery like wild animals for several hours. Jill did everything he wanted. What really shocked and disgusted me was what Jill said to her lover. "I need to meet you and the guys again. What we have is great. Having you all together is heaven. I've never met a guy she's been horny with. We were both about the same age and build. It is impossible to say that he was somehow better than me given the evidence. I plan to catch them at the cottage, beat the crap out of him, and throw Jill out onto the street." The following Thursday, I left work and drove past where we lived and sure enough, Jill's car and another one I didn't know were parked in the driveway. I parked on the street and headed toward my house. When I walked inside, I could hear them upstairs enjoying rough sex. I stormed into the bedroom and yelled at this idiot to get out of my house. This turned out to be a bad move as it was another idiot. The guy was well over 6 feet tall and must have weighed 100 pounds more than me. I saw him heading towards me and then everything went dark. When I came to, I was tied to a chair and gagged. Jill was having sex with 3 guys and screaming with pleasure. Eventually, one of them noticed that I was awake. "Hey! Look! The little weakling is awake." They all left. I watched as Jill freed herself from the massive bodies on the bed and walked over to where I was sitting. The woman I married stood there and smiled. She pulled the gag out of my mouth. "Why, Jill? Why did this to us? I realize that being married to you is boring. I wanna have fun and all you need are children and a wife at home to look after you." "Well, that won't happen. You thought you could barge in and ruin my fun, didn't you?" Jill stared at me with a sick smile on her face. "As you can see, I have 3 real men here who are satisfying me now, so I don't need you anymore. Now that we're done, my friends are going to take you somewhere. I hope you enjoy." I didn't know the woman standing in front of me. Of course, it wasn't my wife. She wouldn't do that to me. Would she? One of the guys came up and hit me hard in the face. The lights went out. It was dark when I moved, and it took me a few seconds to get my bearings. I knew that I was lying on my side with my wrists and ankles tied, and I had a hood over my head. The movement told me I was in a vehicle, and judging by the cold metal floor, I assumed it was a van of some kind. "Looks like he's waking up again. Okay. That saves us the trouble of lugging him around. We're almost there." I was thrown a little when the car was driving on a bumpy road or dirt track. My head hurt from the blow I had received. I was glad when the car stopped. Little did he know he's waking up again. Okay. That saves us the trouble of lugging him around. We're almost there. I was thrown a little when the car was driving on a bumpy road or dirt track. My head hurt from the blow I had received. I was glad when the car stopped. Little did I know that it would have been better if they had kept going. Untie his legs, at least he can walk his last few steps. The last few steps, I suddenly realized that I was about to be killed. At least it seemed so to me. I was led across some uneven ground, and I almost fell several times. "Get up. I am not going to carry you. Now go." The voice instructed me when a hand slapped the back of my head. I silently prayed that whatever they were going to do to me would be quick, and if this was my fate, that it would be over. With quickly, I stood there waiting to hear the click of the pistol being loaded, the hood on my head preventing me from seeing anything. Suddenly, they started kicking and punching me and I fell to the ground. The blows continued until Maya knew that I was still alive. Barely, but still alive. I felt a hand touch my neck. Fingers moving gently around me. There is no pulse. He is dead. Should we bury him or leave him here for what? Leave it here. There's no one around for miles, and if his body is ever found, there won't be much left of it. If the guy checking me knew what he was doing, he would have felt my pulse, but where his fingers touch my neck, he had no chance. I heard my attackers laugh as they left. I lay motionless for what seemed like hours. But in reality, it was probably 10 minutes or so. I didn't move until I heard the sound of a car driving away in the distance. As I lay on the ground, I wondered what made Jill hate me so much. What made her become a... I always treated her right. Pain shot through my body as I tried to stand up. It took several attempts as my wrists were tied. Finally, I managed to stand up. My body hurt as if I had been hit by a truck. I knew that the first thing I had to do was try to remove the hood from my beaten and mutilated head. I didn't want to wander around in complete darkness. Walking slowly, I came across a bush or something and pressed my head against it, trying to remove the hood. Eventually, the hood caught and I was able to free myself from it. My eyes adjusting to the different darkness. To be honest, my left eye was closed, and it wasn't much use. Anyway, I was just hoping that what happened wasn't permanent. Once my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I had no idea where I was. All I knew was that I was left in the forest or thicket. Slowly, I moved along the path that seemed easiest to me. I was in no condition to climb up. After some fall, I am not ex-military or anything, just a normal guy who didn't wanna die. It took everything I had, left to just wander in one direction. Sometime later, still in great pain, I noticed the light in the distance. As I approached the source of light, I realized that it was a cottage or farmhouse, and I found enough energy to reach the gate. Trying to open it was beyond my strength. I screamed, and suddenly everything was plunged into darkness again. When I managed to open my eyes, the left one was still closed. I noticed that I was in a room. I tried to sit up, the pain was too much and I flopped onto my back. Please don't move. Apparently, you had an accident or something. I looked up and saw a woman standing over me. Who are you? How did I get here? I found you near the house last night. I heard you scream, and when I looked around, you were lying on the ground unconscious. I remember trying to open the gate. Now I still didn't tell me what happened, if you can remember. Oh, I remembered everything perfectly. I just wasn't sure if I should discuss this with this strange woman. My name is Rosemary. You can call me Rosie. I prefer it that way. So how did you end up in this state? It's a long story, and I'm not sure if I should tell you. My ribs hurt every time I try to speak or breathe heavily. Should I call the police? No. Please, no police. I promise you that I won't hurt you, and I'll tell you what happened, just not right now. Rosie smiled. I must have blacked out because I don't remember anything after that. The next time I woke up, Rosie was in the room, and this time I managed to sit up. Rosie fluffed a couple of pillows so I could sit properly. I saw that my torso was wrapped in bandages and there were several cuts on my arms and legs. Do you have a mirror? Rosie nodded and handed me a small mirror. I almost dropped it when I saw my reflection. My lips were cut and swollen. My left eye was black and swollen shut. My right eye was badly bruised, and I had several more cuts on my face. Now are you ready to tell me who you are and what happened? I nodded my head. I told Rosie everything I could remember, from catching Jill in bed with 3 men to trying to open her gate. Tony, you really should call the police. You know? No. Please don't. I will deal with this in my own way and in my own time. The last thing I need is police intervention. Have it your way and do what you have to do. Now I don't know where you live or anything, so you better stay here until you're mobile and healthy enough to leave. I thanked Rosie for her kindness. I had no idea who this woman was. I think she was about 45 years old, a good 10 years older than me. Rosie allowed me to use her phone to call Barry and let him know I was okay. Tony, where the hell have you been? Everyone is going crazy trying to find you. Jill was here terribly worried that you were missing. Barry, do me a favor. If Jill asks, you haven't heard from me at all. I promise that I will explain everything at the next meeting. If something comes up at work, I trust you to handle it. I ended the call and Barry seemed satisfied. Rosie asked me what my plans were. I'm going to rest until I can move and return home. After this, I'm going to make some people pay for everything. I don't know how yet, but they will pay. Rosie simply nodded and smiled. It suddenly dawned on me that other than knowing her name, I knew nothing about Rosie. Come to think of it, I had no idea where I was. When Rosie told me the name of the nearest village, I figured I must have been at least 3 hours away from home. Rosie fed and looked after me, and it was only after a few weeks that I felt well enough to leave. I told Rosie that I would call and ask someone to pick me up. I'll drop you off in the village at the railway station. No matter who you call, he will never find this place. It is too remote. I could hardly fit into Rosie's little car, proof that I was not yet fully recovered. I thanked Rosie for everything. Her answer was simple. Do what you have to do, Tony, but please be careful. I sat and waited for Barry to pick me up. Jesus Christ, Tony, what happened to you? Barry asked when he appeared. I told Barry everything. He shook his head in disbelief. I think I know why she did it, Barry. If we divorce, she will get half of everything. Jill is greedy and wants everything. I bet she promised her buddies a ton of cash if they got rid of me. She knows the company is worth millions. I think she would sell it and spend her days having sex with whoever wants her. You can stay with me, buddy. If anyone asks, I will tell them that I have no idea where you are. Thank you, Barry. Do me a favor and please bring my laptop from the office. Oh, and I'll also need some clothes. Barry laughed and said he felt like he was harboring a fugitive. Not yet, but this could happen if I get caught while I'm taking revenge. Well, then you better not get caught. I don't want to know what you're planning. On the way, we stopped at a shopping center. I managed to get a few jeans, t-shirts, socks, underwear, and a pair of sneakers. For now, this is enough. I had a full wardrobe at home, or at least I hope that was the case. Luckily, it was dark when we pulled up to Barry's house, and I could just imagine the neighbors talking about me. According to Barry, Jo played the role of a loving wife very well. She called everyone who knew me, that is everyone except the police. She called Barry regularly every day and asked if he had any news from me. Of course, his answer was no. Gradually, I recovered and could already walk without experiencing severe pain. Barry told me that Joel's calls were now down to 1 call a week. I assumed she was too busy enjoying herself to worry about me. Sometimes it's good to have time to think. In my case, it led me to think about how terrible my revenge would be. I wanted to truly take revenge and was analyzing my options. Sitting around all day, I came up with a few ways to deal with Jill